We'll talk about Medicare options. We'll talk about how it works and what the plan costs, next steps for you as retirees, and then we'll talk about enrollment periods and how you pay premiums. So this slide should be pretty familiar for most of you. Everybody here has heard of Medicare, right? If you haven't heard of Medicare at this point, you're in trouble, and you need to come spend an hour with me after this meeting, because I need to explain a lot more than I'm going to explain in this presentation. So Medicare is the government program for health insurance. It's been around for a long time. There's been some changes over the years. They added Part D coverage, in the last couple decades. But basically, you can get on Medicare once you're 65 for most of us. There's a couple other conditions that can get you there, or disability can get you there. Medicare, though, does not cover long-term care. That's an important thing to understand. Your Medicare coverage, as well as traditional health insurance, doesn't cover long-term care. So eligibility for Medicare, traditionally most people get there at age 65. If you start receiving Social Security benefits, you're auto-enrolled. If you have railroad retirement benefits, you're also auto-enrolled. And if you're disabled for more than 24 months, you're also auto-enrolled into Medicare. You should plan on applying 3 months before you turn 65. Is anybody in here turning 65 soon? A couple of you look like you're close, right? So a few of you have been there a little longer than that. Or if you have end-stage renal disease or ALS, Lou Gehrig's, then you're also eligible, but you're not auto-enrolled in Medicare. So Part A, just the different parts of Medicare. Part A is your hospital coverage, so it's your inpatient coverage. When you go into the hospital, you have Part A coverage. It covers your hospital stays. It also covers your skilled nursing and hospice care. So one fun fact about Medicare, skilled nursing facilities, everyone wants to go there to rehab, but no one wants to go there longer than just to rehab, right? You want to get fixed and get back home. So under Medicare, the Medicare exchanges, they cover 30 of the 35 Medicare SNFs in Monterey County. Anthem coverage only covers 5 of the skilled nursing facilities. So there are instances where Medicare coverage is actually better than Anthem coverage. And then Part B, medical coverage under Medicare, is your doctor visits, your durable medical equipment, and then your diagnostics. So x-rays, blood tests, those kinds of things. Those are covered under Part D. Part C I'll come back to. But Part D was the most recent add, and that's the prescription drug coverage. So you have some coverage for drug needs under Medicare. Part C is when they lump everything together. So it's Medicare Advantage. It's like they put everything together, and you've got Part A and B together in a single coverage. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but most of you are dealing with Medicare A and B, and then most of you have opted in for Medicare Part D as well, which is prescription drug coverage. Any questions on any of those? No. Okay, so original Medicare costs. Part A is $0 premiums, monthly premiums, as long as you put 40 quarters into Social Security. So anybody here put 40 quarters into Social Security? I would assume almost everyone here. Some of you may have put 400 quarters into Social Security. And it's up to $411 a month with fewer than 40 quarters, $12.88 deductible for hospital stay up to 60 days. If you go to Part B coverage, it's $121.80 monthly premium for newly eligibles, for some of the young folks out there. And there's a $166 deductible annually, and they cover 80% with a 20% co-insurance coming back to you as your responsibility. So Medicare exchanges, this was actually several industries came together 20 to 30 years ago and set up these Medicare exchanges. And what it is Medicare is pretty good about covering most things, but there's a lot of little holes in it. Okay, there's a lot of little pieces that aren't covered, or percentages at the top that aren't covered. So they came up with Medicare Exchange, which has gap coverages. And the gap coverages are offered by almost every insurance carrier. It's not like, I'm sure you guys read about Obamacare recently, where all these different carriers are now dropping Obamacare and won't cover those exchanges. Well, this is something that industry set up a long time ago, and everyone wants to participate in this. So it's not to be confused with Obamacare. This is the Medicare exchanges for gap coverage. And they've been really pretty successful for the past couple of decades. So it gives you access to the Medicare markets, the same ones like, CHOMP has 55% of their inpatient services are Medicare retirees. So they really try to cater to that population because it's what they see a lot of here in Monterey. But this gives you a wider variety of plans and choices than traditional insurance would give you. And there's online connections I'll actually show you. Most people though, how many of you guys love to use computers? That's like your first choice. Well, a few of you. How many of you guys prefer to pick up the phone and talk to somebody? A few more of you? Okay. So you have both choices. You can use a computer, you can pick up the phone and call and talk to somebody. And this will actually show you a lot of information about these services. So these are some of the carriers that we have in the insurance exchanges in Monterey County. You've got Aetna, Anthem, Caramore, Blue Shield, Cigna, Gerber Life Insurance. I love the Gerber baby. It's like so cute, right? I think they hold competitions every 10 years and try and change it, but that one's been there a long time. Mutual of Omaha. So when you talk about Medicare insurance, you have Medicare and then you have Medicare Gap insurance. There's no difference between that Gap insurance no matter who the carrier is. So up there, a lot of people are probably familiar with Anthem. That's the carrier you guys have had for a long time. But in Medicare Gap coverage, there's no difference in the network or the coverage, no matter who you pick. So for example, if you pick a Plan F in a Medicare Gap, there's 8 of them in Monterey County. If you picked Anthem or you picked, I think somebody was saying Aetna was actually the cheapest. It used to be Mutual of Omaha. There's going to be no difference at all in the coverages. The only difference is going to be that the federal government allows them to charge a different administrative fee. So one of the coverages might be a little more expensive than the other. But it's just like, the teenagers, the one that's got to have the Nike shoes, and it costs 5% or 10% more than Adidas or Reebok. So that's important to understand on the medical side, that it doesn't matter which carrier you pick, there's the same coverage under all of these plans. So a little bit more about the Medicare exchanges. There's 57 million Medicare beneficiaries and growing. There's no denial of coverage, so everyone can get this coverage, the gap coverages. Nobody's allowed to be denied out of the coverage. It empowers retirees to control their costs and coverages because you get more choices and options. And for MCSIG, the pool we have, we actually had all of our post-65 retirees move to this about 2 years ago. And the average savings in premiums was 74% for those people going to 100% Medicare coverage. So you all of a sudden had less out of pocket and you were 100% covered, meaning you don't have to pay co-pays, you don't have to pay deductibles, you don't have to pay co-insurances. You're literally 100% covered and 74% premium savings. So that's why we put this program in place a couple of years ago, is for the members to save a substantial amount of money. And then we have hired Connexus Retiree Services, so you have an advocate that's there to help walk you through this process and understand all of your choices, because each year you may be taking a different drug or want to switch plans, and so that's an option for everyone. ACA allows you to change at least once a year. It's federal law now that you have to have a choice at least once a year. And we also, dealing with Medicare is getting pretty burdensome, because they're changing so many of the laws, and ACA is problematic in healthcare just generally. For a gentleman my age in California, since ACA was implemented in 2010, 40% of my increases are due to Obamacare. So since 2010, 40% of the increase on my health insurance premium is due to Obamacare. It hasn't fixed a lot of things, but it's cost a lot of money. It's invariably a lot more expensive now. Question up front. ACA is just another term for Obamacare, and it's the legislation that they passed in Washington. So it just made it a lot more difficult to do a lot of things in healthcare than it was traditionally. And it did fix a few things, like in California, it fixed that you can't discriminate based on age. 40 other states, you couldn't charge a different rate depending on how old you are. California, you were allowed to. So ACA changed that, but then our governor said, no, we'll give you 3 more years where you can charge people based on their age. So that's still going on in California, but eventually that'll go away. You won't be able to age rate health insurance, because most of the country you can't do that. But the reasons we did this is we wanted people to have control, we wanted choice, convenience, and to have a person there to help them through this. And so we hired Connexus. They're out of Texas, and they're a Medicare specialist to do this. So this concierge service that we have, the benefit advisors are available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. In the standard enrollment period, which is October 15th through November 7th, if you guys decide you want to go down to Tahiti and you want to go swimming or skydiving or whatever else during this entire enrollment period and you missed it, you could actually enroll starting January 1st in that October 15th through December 7th. But right now is the open enrollment period. These guys will have an eligibility file on Wednesday for everyone, so you can start calling Wednesday. If you call before then, they'll say, where are you from? I can't see you. I'm not sure who you are or where you're from. We actually had a couple people from this morning's meeting already call, and they were told that they're trying to load it and get all the information in. But on Wednesday, they'll have all your information. So these guys, the benefits advisors, because Medicare is getting so complicated, they have to have 150 hours every year of training in Medicare. So it's such a complicated animal to deal with. These guys that you'll be talking to have to have annually 150 hours of training just in Medicare and the gap coverages. One of the other things that they have is it doesn't matter if you live here in Monterey County or if you live anywhere else in the country, they have access to a database that shows them all of the plans no matter where you are at in the country. So Connexus is one of the best experts in the country at doing this, and that's why we've hired them to walk people through this process. 100% of incoming calls are recorded. If you were to have a problem with Connexus, certainly MCSIG is happy to advocate on your behalf and get something resolved with them or to work with them to get something fixed. And the number there at the bottom is their number. It's also at the end of these slides if you want to wait and see it there. So for those of you who prefer to use online, want to get on the website and go play with this, this is an example of what you'd find after you go through and answer the questions. It will compare your top 3 plans. And so for medical coverage, Plan F, so there's several different types of plans under Medicare Gap Coverage. Most people, about 85% of our participants, picked Plan F because it's 100% coverage. So if you go to Plan F, you don't have to worry about co-pays and co-insurance and all that other stuff. It's actually pretty cheap. And you just pay your monthly premiums and you're done. And so it's really pretty easy to do. Most people pick Plan F, and that's what we've got up here is Plan Fs for 3 different carriers, Blue Shield, Aetna, and Humana. And once you put in your information, it'll actually come up with this information. For those who prefer to call, the gentleman on the other side, he'll be typing on a computer and he'll pull up the same things and he'll talk to you about the same information. So. One of the important things to understand about Medicare coverage, how many here have Part D medical coverage for Medicare Part D? So that's an opt-in. You don't have to take prescription drug coverage. In fact, if you're out running marathons and doing triathlons and Ironmans and those kinds of things, maybe you don't want to do that. It might be cheaper just to buy a drug if you ever need it. But for most of us, we do need Medicare Part D because we are taking a few prescriptions, and it's substantially cheaper if you have the Part D coverage. When calling a Connexus or talking to them, though, so the medical side is pretty easy to understand. The prescription D gap coverage is pretty substantially different based on carrier, and so every carrier has a different formulary. And so when calling Connexus, you want to have a list of all the drugs you're taking or plan on taking in the near future, because they can help figure out what's the cheapest medical plan or the cheapest Medicare Part D gap coverage for you based on the premium and the drugs you're taking, which can be a little bit more complex. So that's an important thing to understand when you're picking a plan. So this is a decision tree, and we haven't talked much about Medicare Advantage, but that's one of the critical things to understand. So in Monterey County, there is 4 Medicare D Advantage plans that you can pick from. It's all through CHOMP. They came up with their own insurance. I just lost the name of it. Aspire. Oh, you guys are getting their mailers and things, I see. So Aspire Health, there's 4 plans. They may be putting out another one this year. They couldn't talk to me about it because until CMS approves it in October for the next year, they can lose their license if they talk to anybody about it. So, but there's at least 4 plans. Medicare Advantage is where you combine everything together and it's all in a single plan. It typically has a little bit of vision and dental and some other things ancillary. It's more of a traditional insurance. But you've got to decide if you want to go to Medicare Advantage or if you want to go to keep your standard Medicare coverage and then pick up gaps with that coverage. So Medicare Advantage is a little bit cheaper, but it's got some provisions in there like traditional insurance does that you've got to make sure you understand and work around. So what most retirees end up doing is they keep their traditional Medicare insurance. They have their Part D and then they pick Medigaps. But certainly some of you may be wanting to take advantage of Medicare Advantage in this community because it does save you a little bit in premiums. But if you have planned surgeries and things like that, you need to make sure you understand it because some of the Medicare Advantages are only coverages in county. I think that was what lost a lot of people the first year or two. They do have one new plan that will swing out of county at the 80-20 rates, normal Medicare rates. But that's the important thing to decide when going down this path. So Medicare Advantage, they take in your Part A and your Part B, and Part D usually. There are some additional benefits. I just talked about this a little bit, but you sometimes have, and here you do, you have some vision, some hearing, some dental services in there, but you also have a maximum out of pocket in there. When you go to Medicare Gap Coverage, typically you just pick Plan F and you're 100% covered. So you don't have to worry about anything else. If Medicare covers it, you're covered at 100%. So it's a lot simpler to deal with that. So with coverages, gaps, Medigap, you get rid of that deductible, that co-insurance, those other parts that it doesn't cover. One important note is that you can't pick Medicare Advantage and then have additional gap coverage. So you've got to pick one or the other. They won't let you go on Medicare Advantage and then also get gap coverage. That's just not an option in the Medicare exchanges. So, and then prescription drugs, you choose your best plan based on the formularies. And then donut hole, has anybody ever heard of the donut hole in prescription? Yeah, it's a scary little area. So you're going through and you're eating this delicious donut and then all of a sudden it just disappears and there's this hole in the middle. And then you go a little while and then the donut starts again, right? And there's this delicious donut on the other side. Well, that same thing happens in Medicare where you're getting your prescription drugs and then all of a sudden there's this donut hole and they all of a sudden don't cover anything. And then as soon as you get to a certain other level, then it kicks in again and it starts covering. It's one of the goofiest pieces of legislation I've ever seen in my life. But with the gap coverages, you don't have to worry about that donut hole, right? So the differential is picked up by your Medicare Part D gap coverage, so you don't worry about that. But with just standard Medicare Part D, there's a donut hole that's important to understand. So in Monterey County, this is an example on slide 17 of the plan choices. So you can see there's a lot of options in Monterey County. And this is based on our county. If you go to different counties, there's going to be different choices there. I footnoted that Aspire has 4 Medicare Advantage plans in here. I'm not sure why their software was only pulling 1, unless they unregistered it from the National Exchange, which I don't know why Aspire would do that. But So that's the top line is Medicare Advantage. The premium for that, I think that's the low-end plan, would be $47 a month. If you look at the gap coverages, so there's 49 plans. There's 8 Plan Fs because they have like Plan A, B, C, D, and then there's 8 Plan Fs. That's the one that's 100% coverage. That's what most people traditionally pick. And for Plan F, the premium you're looking at between $138.70 to $179 for Plan F at a 65-year-old, and if you're talking about a 75-year-old, it's $188 up to $260. So the exchanges are set up on 5-year increments, so the premiums go up every 5 years a little bit, and then they cap out. It's either age 75 or age 80, and then after that they don't go up anymore. So. But this is traditionally a lot cheaper than regular insurance, and there's less to worry about, and so that's why we did this with our members. Yeah, when they pulled this, it actually pulled a whole slew of zip codes because there's several in Monterey County, but they did pull the whole county. So
the whole county is not all of Monterey County is not.
Yeah, it may be a typo, I'm not sure, but I know that this is accurate. We actually pulled in and looked at all of the plans. So our zip code, I'm not sure where 93401 is, but this is Monterey County. So if you look at so you have 2 different gap coverages. You have medical gap, so you've got your traditional Medicare A and B, and then you pick up a gap coverage for that. Most people pick Plan F. And then you pick a gap coverage for your Medicare Part D, right? So you want to understand, I've got Part D coverage, I've got to pick a plan to cover the difference of that. And that's where the biggest variety is, because every carrier has a different formulary. So based on the drugs you're taking, that's what's really hard to figure out and why you need Connexus to plug it all in the computers and figure out what's the best option for you.
I am a little concerned because 93401 is San Luis Obispo. So I want to make sure that really is from Monterey County.
It is, so this is Monterey County. I didn't know that was San Luis Obispo, but I'm so glad somebody in the audience knew where us geographically challenged we're at. But it is Monterey County. These are the plans for Monterey County. So at the bottom you have your Part D coverages, and some plans have a lot more drugs on their formulary list. Those are the ones that are a little more expensive. So if you're taking a drug that's more expensive, and it doesn't matter which drugs you're taking, you want to have a list of those when you call Connexus, because they'll plug all that in and it'll figure out what's going to be the cheapest for you based on copays, based on premiums, and then based on the drugs you're taking. And for us mere mortals, that's like 30 variable calculus. That's a little hard for us to do. But computers handle it very, very well. So. But this is an example of what your choices are in Monterey County. If you move somewhere else, you would have totally different choices. Santa Cruz, I think, has 4 Medicare Advantage plans. San Jose has 9 Medicare Advantage plans. So it varies throughout the country wherever you move to. And if you decide to move somewhere, you'd want to call Connexus and switch your coverage because you may have better choices going somewhere else. One of the reasons why Medicare Gap Coverage is so cheap is because it's the same rate throughout the country. So you don't, in Monterey County it probably feels pretty cheap for us. In Nebraska they're probably saying, well, this is not much cheaper than my regular insurance. So that's one of the advantages of going to this in the area we're in. Yes?
I would look at it going down and as the more expensive.
So if you pick if you pick Medicare Advantage, that's what you're choosing. If you go to the gap coverages, you'd have a Medigap for Medicare A and B, and then you'd have a Medicare D gap. So you'd pick so if you pick the first box, that's all you're picking. If you picked box 2, you would probably pick up box 3 unless you didn't want Medicare Part D gap coverage, right?
But the Medigap goes with the traditional Medicare.
Right, right. Yeah, so the first one is your Medicare Advantage. That top row is Medicare Advantage. and then your traditional Medicare gap coverage, and then your Part D gap coverage. Yeah. So. No. So if you pick Medicare Advantage, the top line, that would be your premium. Okay? So the premium for Medicare Advantage is a combined, they throw everything in together. A lot of people that pick Medicare Advantage even will still say, I want to keep my vision and my dental separate because those are really important to me. And I believe you guys can do that same thing here. You can keep your vision and dental outside if you want, and then you have a little bit of additional. If you're talking about the second and third line, so the second line is your Medicare gap coverage, right? So that's your A and B, Medicare A and B. You get gap coverage for that so that you're covered at 100%, most people do, covered 100% on the Plan F, and then you're paying that premium, and then you don't ever have to pay co-pays or deductibles or co-insurance. That's the only premium you're paying is for Part F. The last of those three rows is your gap for D, Medicare Part D coverage. Not everyone elects that. About 5% of Medicare retirees never elect Part D. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. So you have to opt into Medicare Part D, which you may want to explore with your Connexus Retiree Services person if you're not sure if you have D coverage or not. If you're paying a lot for prescription drugs, you may never have elected in because it's an opt-in.
So you're saying that Plan D does not include, or Plan F does not include Part D?
Correct. If you pick Plan F, you are at 100% medical coverage on your Medicare A and Medicare B. And then D is separate, correct. Oh, go ahead. So the question was, if I move to San Jose and then I don't like it there and 4 months later I move back, do I have to switch coverages? If you're on the Medicare Advantage one, the Aspire plans, there's 2 of those Aspire plans that are only in Monterey County. If you're moving, you would have to switch out of those. If you're in the Medicare Gap coverages, so like the Humana or the Aetna or the Anthem or any of those, you could switch out plans because I'll have different choices there, but you wouldn't have to. Does that make sense? So if you move locations, if your geography, your primary residence changes, you can always switch plans, okay? If your primary residence moves to a different place, you can switch plans. If you have a life event, okay, you can switch plans. You'll have a special open enrollment right now, but there's always, every year, there's an annual open enrollment where you can switch plans to. That's October 15th through December 7th. That's the standard open enrollment. So you can change plans that time of the year every single year if you wanted, irrespective of moving. Oh, another question back here. So AARP, how many of you guys have heard of AARP? Okay, like 10 of you are lying to me because I know you've all heard of AARP. I see. I get all of their mailers and things, okay? So AARP has been around a long time. AARP is just Medicare gap coverage. That's all it is. So if you want to get AARP, you can get it. It's actually not the cheapest plan up there. Aetna, I was told earlier today, is now the cheapest plan. It was Mutual of Omaha. But AARP is exactly what this is. Okay, so it's Medicare gap coverage. There's just a lot of players out there. So we wanted to give you guys a tool and a resource to help you know what all of your choices and options were. AARP is a choice. It's not the cheapest. They are definitely the best marketers. I will give them that. They do a really good job of billboards and newspapers and just all sorts of things. I think I get even Facebook stuff from them occasionally. So they've got a great marketing department, but it's no different coverage than any of these other gap coverages. So if you went with Plan F with AARP, it's going to be the same as with Aetna or any of these other carriers. So, good question though.
You have secondary insurance already, and not carry over. Sorry, does that mean I don't need it? Like this?
So the question was, if I have secondary coverage, I assume through a spouse, that's traditionally where you get it, do I need to even get Medicare Gap Coverage? And that really depends based on what your secondary coverage is. If you've got secondary coverage, it's a really high deductible plan where you've got to spend the first $5,000 before it kicks in, which a lot of high deductible plans now are that high. You may want to look at gap coverage. It may make sense for you. If you've got a really rich secondary coverage, it's like a 90-10 plan and they pay almost everything, you probably don't want gap coverage, right? Just having your Medicare plus that secondary is probably sufficient. What picking Plan F would do is you then know that I'm paying this monthly premium and I'm never going to have to pay anything else. So it just kind of simplifies it for you. But if you have decent secondary coverage, you probably don't need gap coverage. But a great question. I think we had another one.
With Advantage, is there deductibles?
So if you go with Medicare Advantage, is there a deductible? It is more of a traditional plan. So there are deductibles, there are co-insurances. I think with Aspire, if you use CHOMP, they waive some of that for you. So, just really briefly, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Monterey County costs about 20 to 30% more for inpatient care than Los Angeles or San Francisco. So let me say it again. Monterey County costs 20 to 30% more for inpatient care than LA or San Francisco. And in Medicare, because it's such a big group, they can really, really hammer down on the pricing of things. Like a knee replacement, if you are getting knee replacement at CHOMP, they're going to charge Medicare $30,000 for that. If you were in CVT or MCSIG, we would pay somewhere between $69,000 and $89,000 for that same surgery. Okay, so the Medicare network is huge, and because of that, that gap coverage is so cheap because they've done such a good job negotiating down rates, and that's why the gap coverage is so much cheaper than traditional insurance. So not usually very well known, but Monterey's pretty expensive for healthcare compared to other parts of California. Oh, I didn't even get to this yet. So today's the retiree meeting. Connexus Retiree Services Benefit Advisors, that's what the thing up there is. You can engage them online. You can call them over the phone. You give them the information you have about what you're enrolled in. Most of you are probably in A and B. Almost all of you are probably in D. You give them that information. You give them your age. You talk with them about what drugs you might be taking, and then they plug all that into a computer system and then figures out, okay, these are your best choices. And then you get to choose what you want to go with. And they are very objective. So MCSIG pays for this service for you guys to have a great concierge service to help you get to gap coverages and know what all your options are. If you want to call them on Wednesday, you can. They will start mailing out packets, so everyone will get a packet with information in it. Those typically take a week to 2 weeks to get to you. But if you want to start calling Wednesday, you're certainly welcome to it. They can walk you through all the same information. You probably will still get a packet in the mail, even if you go through that process and pick what plan you want. You can just throw the packet out if you're already done with it, because they'll mail it to everyone. And then once you pick a plan, they'll send you the information and you sign the enrollment forms for that carrier, and then you're done. So that's the process. One important thing to understand is MCSIG has a special allowance for retirees, post-65 retirees. If you've got underage dependents who are under age 26, they're allowed to stay on MCSIG coverage. If you've got a spouse who's under age 65, they are also allowed to stay on MCSIG coverage. So that's a special allowance our board made for retirees, post-65 retirees. I don't know if that affects a lot of people here, but under. So post-65, you've got to use the gap coverages, but let's use the example. She robbed the cradle, and her husband is 45 years old, okay? And that husband who's 45 years old and he lifts weights out at Muscle Beach every day, he can stay on MCSIG coverage, which is our traditional plans, until he ages out at age 65, okay? And that was an allowance we made for, the board made for anybody who has that situation where you've got a spouse or a dependent that's underage, because so if you got a, sorry, okay, let me take the other question now. So he's not on Muscle Beach and he's not pumping. So the spouse who's 70, they'll go through the same process, right? Unless they have coverage through their other employer. Okay, so this is individual policy, and each of you would go through this coverage, and you'd go through the same thing to figure out what the best coverage is for you. And oftentimes, one spouse isn't taking very many medications, the other is. So you might be on different Medicare Part D gap coverages. And that actually allows you to save quite a bit of money for the one spouse. So, another question here in the back.
In case I missed it, when does the MCSIG plans that we use take place?
Okay, so CVT coverage ends October 1st. So that's when MCSIG's coming in for all of the districts, and that would be when you'd roll to Medicare Gap coverages. And I actually have 2 more slides here, so let me jump onto those. But so right now there's a special enrollment period. It's from the beginning of August through the end of September. Although if you want to go clear up to September 30th, you won't have your card October 1st, I can promise. So you probably want to allow about 2 weeks if you want to make sure you have that card October 1st. You want to enroll at least 2 weeks before that to make sure they have time to get you out your card. And then annual enrollments. So there's an annual enrollment every year from October 15th to December 7th. And that's when they have those extended customer service hours with Connexus, because everyone in the country is looking at this question. Do I want to change coverages? Maybe my doctor put me on a different prescription and I want to see if there's somebody who's got it on their formulary, so I can save some money in that way. That's typically the biggest question each year, but there could be other things you want to look at to change. Maybe you didn't go on Plan F, you picked like Plan A or B that's like 90% coverage, and you're like, well, I just want to go to the 100% coverage so I don't have to worry about it anymore. Then you'd have that opportunity every year from October 15th through December 7th. There's a typo on this slide, and I apologize. This should say January 1st of 2017. So if you, yeah, I'm playing Back to the Future or something up here, I apologize. So if you miss this enrollment period, the special enrollment period right now through the end of next month, I think I mentioned this earlier, you guys were down in Tahiti or somewhere snorkeling or having fun, and you missed the entire enrollment period, you still could take the annual enrollment period to enroll for January 1st. So this enrollment period will get you in October 1st. If you were to miss that for some reason, you could still take the annual enrollment period and enroll for a January 1st, 2017 start date. So you would just have your Medicare coverages from, yeah, so you'd miss that gap between that period.
If there are no changes,
Connexus? I would probably look at it at least every 5 years, just because the administrative fee that those carriers are allowed to charge changes each year a little bit. Year to year it's not going to change very much, but every 5 years it's probably worth looking at, because you might save another $10 a month, because somebody else is saying, you know what, we're charging way too much administrative fees. Like last year, Mutual of Omaha, I think it was $10 cheaper than anybody else in Monterey County. I don't know why.
so it would just be automatic.
So you would roll over to the next year and the same thing unless you called them and wanted to make a change. And you can make that change every year from October through December. And then newly retiring Medicare members have to make a plan selection upon retirement. So if you're a Medicare retiree, you go to the same kind of a coverage, which I think all of you guys here are retirees. Is there anybody here active still? No? Okay. Okay, and then paying your premiums. So these carriers, you pay them directly, whether you pick an Anthem, Mutual of Omaha, the Gerber folks. So they'll bill directly to you. You send payments to the carrier. Most all of them accept check, credit card. You can set up ACH. One note on Medicare Advantage, You actually can say, I want that to come out of my Social Security check so I don't ever have to worry about it. That's a slight advantage, but was there a question up front?
Teachers don't get Social Security. Anybody who has got Social Security worked in outside of California state job.
Okay, so all teachers are CalSTRS, is that the CalSTRS, and they opted out of participating in.
Opt out, we're told we can't. And we did opt out, we were told.
I better rephrase that. So when they passed, when they passed legislation saying no double dipping, right? That was what happened. Was Washington passed legislation.
Worked on another job and could qualify for collection.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to participate in Social Security if you're a participant in CalSTRS. I know for CalPERS, they took the other route and they said you will still pay into Social Security and you can participate in Social Security, but you won't. I don't think you get very much. I think you get like 70 cents on the dollar or something. So anyway, another question?
Why are we
$770 for what? Oh, your current premium. So current premiums are probably a little bit more than these amounts you're seeing up there, and that's why we did this with our members, is because you have a plethora of choices. It saves you quite a bit on premiums, and any outlying issues typically are much less than that differential you're saving every month. So I think that's all I have for you guys today. Is there any questions you guys have, additional questions? I'll stick around for a couple hours if people need me. I'm happy to take individuals, or if you've got group questions.
So we don't want to, okay, so we either call the victim or we do it online, or
So if you just go to Connexus, if you just Google Connexus, I should have put that in here, I'm sorry. So it's in the slides, that last slide right there, Connexus. So the last slide has Connexus Retiree Services listed there. But if you just Google Connexus, you can get to their website and you can go through the steps.
It's not that URL, you have to Google Connexus to find the actual URL.
Oh, so this bottom one right here, Medicare Health Compare, is Medicare's comparison. Medicare has a website that will do some of the similar things, but what they really don't do a good job of is on the Medicare Part D coverages. So when you put in all your different drugs, they're not quite as efficient or effective as calculating what the best plan for you is. But there is a tool out there Medicare has that's Health Care Compare, that you'll find all these plans. The hard thing is, which one's the best one for me? And so that's what Connexus really walks you through and figures out. Looks at personal circumstance and helps you figure out what's the best plan for you. Question in the back and then up front.
The current plan, CVT, terminates in October 1st?
So September 30th is the last day of CVT coverage. MCSIG comes in October.
In order to sign up for this new plan, that takes place within this window that you have here.
Right.
And we can do that by using the calling that telephone?
Calling Connexus, correct. Yeah, so you don't want to enroll, when you're calling Connexus, you want to make sure you enroll October 1st. Some people may call and say, I want to enroll in September. If you enrolled in September, you'd have your CVT coverage and your Medicare and your Gap coverage for the month of September, which I guess you'd be like 180% covered or something. But you want to target October 1st for enrolling. Oh, WAP here first. So if you picked AARP, the question was, if I pick AARP, can I ever use any of this? So these services are paid for by MCSIG, and you're welcome to use them anytime you want. If you want to go with AARP, I didn't know that was a tongue twister. AARP, you certainly are welcome to. They're, I think, the 4th cheapest. So they do a great job at marketing, but it's the same coverage as anybody else. And in the back, we had a question.
Yeah. Do we have to do anything with CVT, or is it automatically done?
You do not have to do anything with CVT. I believe the rate increase was about 30%, and that's why the district made the decision to move to MCSIG coverage. So it will terminate September 30th.
But I have to reply by next week from CBT.
So many of you have already received your CBT packets for open enrollment. You can completely disregard it. We are no longer going to be contracted with them as of September 30th, so there's no reason to respond. The other piece of information I wanted you to be aware of, if you hadn't received it in the mail already, CBT sent a letter out either Thursday or Friday to inform all of you that when you initially signed up for CBT, you were required to pay a deposit and your first month's premium, and then they started deducting out of your checking account. I was informed on Friday that they are not going to do that. You will not get a refund, but what they're going to do is take your deposit and pay the September premium. So there will be no deduction taken out of your checking account. The deposit you paid initially will cover September, and that will be done. Okay?
You don't have to do anything.
No.
Up here. Okay, yeah, so let me address this. We had a question up front here. Doctors that don't take Medicare. So we've dealt with this issue a lot in Monterey County. In fact, over in PG, primary care doctors, 75% of them will not take any insurance. So they won't take Anthem, they won't take Medicare, they won't take anything. And it's a growing problem we're facing in America. I think we're up to 26 or 27% of all primary care doctors now will not take any insurance. So it is a problem, and if they don't take Medicare, then that is a problem. But the advantage is that there are a lot of doctors here that really focus on Medicare in Monterey County, and that's an advantage with Medicare because they oftentimes have more providers than even Anthem does in this area. Any more questions? So MCSIG we use Anthem as our ASO. So MCSIG has Anthem PPO network, and that's the meeting next door for the pre-65s. But yes, we do use Anthem's network, and it's the broadest one nationwide. But here in Monterey County, there's some that won't contract with Anthem that will contract with Medicare. It's kind of odd. Another question here? The question is, do I get a packet from MCSIG today? So the presentation here was on Connexus, and you'll be getting a packet mailed from Connexus. But if you don't want to wait for the packet, you can actually just start calling them on Wednesday, and they can do all this anytime from Wednesday forward. So Connexus may have already mailed the packets, but typically they take about 2 weeks to get out to the retirees. So you would see them in the next week to 2 weeks. If they haven't mailed them yet, it'll be in the next day or two. But that's a great question. So the question up front was, if I go directly to AARP or I go through Connexus, is there any difference in the premiums that I'll pay? And the answer is no. Because this is a nationwide exchange, everyone pays the same rates. And there is some age rating in there, but there's no geographical rating or anything else. So exactly. So the advantage of Connexus is it's a concierge service that helps you understand all of your options, the wide variety of options, and then narrows it down to what your best choices are and gives you the opportunity to be the consumer and choose. The biggest advantage is when it comes to prescription drugs. So if you're taking 3 or 4 prescription drugs or more, and that's a critical factor, make sure you have all that information for them, because they can help you save a bundle of money every year on prescription drugs. The first 2 years we did this, we actually went back and looked at what people were paying in premiums pre-Connexus to post, and the average retiree saves 74% in premiums. So that's a huge, huge differential. Right here in the middle. So pre-65, like early retirees, right? So if you're, yeah, and I'm sorry I haven't seen the letter, but the question was that we were looking at plans that the retirees could take, and so with MCSIG, we actually moved all of our post-65 retirees after we looked at this for 3 years, 2 years ago, and we did 2 years of road shows and really vetted this really well. And our board is made up of half representative leadership and then half labor. So they evaluate these things very thoroughly. It goes through a 5 or 6 step process before we make any changes. And in this one, we actually did road shows for 2 years before we did this. But a lot of people were worried when we did these road shows a couple of years ago. I had about 20 people contact me out of, I think we presented about 500 afterwards, and they said, why didn't you guys do this earlier? They were mad at me because we didn't do it a few years earlier because of the savings. But I haven't had any angry people calling me saying, they don't do this or they don't do this. So if you do run into something that isn't happening, feel free to give MCSIG a call and let us know any issues you're having. Likewise, if Connexus isn't responsive, they don't get back to you within a day or two, give us a call and we can follow up with them. There's 3 or 4 of you out there already have talked to Connexus and have been a few hurdles down this, but we're happy to help when we can. Question over here. MCSIG stands for Municipalities, Colleges, Schools Insurance Group, formerly known as Monterey County Schools Insurance Group. So we were formed by 22 of the 24 districts in county here in Monterey, and our offices are over in Salinas. So have any of you guys been to Gino's Italian? Yeah. So if you go into Salinas, you run into Gino's right as you hit the border of Salinas. We're a half block down from Gino's on 76 Stephanie Drive, and you guys are welcome to stop by anytime. Municipalities, colleges, schools, insurance group. And it was formerly known as Monterey County Schools Insurance Group. All right, so from here on Wednesday or forward, pick up the phone and call Connexus. Tell them that your CVT gap, your CVT secondary coverage is going away October 1st. You're with MCSIG and you need to pick some plans. They'll ask a bunch of questions. You tell them whatever they're asking, and they will help you give you your top 3 choices. You'll pick what you want. They'll work with the carrier, get you mailed out the forms for it, and then you'll set up payments and move forward. So the question was, if I've got a post-65 spouse who's primarily Medicare, they're eligible for MCSIG. So if they're under 65, over 65, they'll go through the same process. So because of HIPAA, you have to actually sign a form that allows you to talk to another post-18-year-old about their medical coverage. You can do that. You can call for your spouse. They'll just need you to sign a little form. He can do the exact same thing you're doing. We pay for you to do it, for your spouse to do it. Yeah. Yep. Same process. Question back in the hat in the very back there.
Telephone number on page 21. Retiree Service. Is that the one that if somebody calls that, did they get you? Or is that how they get the office?
So on page 21, the Connexus Retiree Services, they're a call center in Texas. The company Connexus is actually out of Texas, but they have this down for the entire country. You can call from anywhere in the country, and they can tell you what coverages are in that county.
The question was back here is how do they call you?
Oh, if you want to call me, so MCSIG, I will hang around and you can talk to me in person, but You can call MCSIG. The administrative offices, if you're having a problem, it's probably better to call that. It's 755-0161, and that's an 831 number. So 755-0161. And I'm here presenting today. My name's Mike Larson, and next door is Roxanne Buckner. She's the Administrative Services Manager. And we have a customer service number you're allowed to call, or you can call anytime between 7 and 7, any day of the week as well, if you can't get a hold of me or Roxanne. So you're certainly welcome to call us.
That's the 755. What's the customer service number?
Is that the 755 number?
So no, it is a 755 number. So customer service is 755. I had this question earlier and I stumbled on it too. It's
Really asking about the honorary deductible.
I think it's 755. You know what? I better look it up. I'll look it up here and tell you. But any other questions for me? It is 831. We're locally here, so. Another question back here?
Since this plan is, I don't know, underwritten, co-written, if you need to go to better services, a different hospital, say Stanford, is your coverage good there, or is it?
So the question was, if I need to go out of county and I need to go to another hospital, say Stanford or UCSF or UCLA, right? Really good hospitals. Medicare Advantage, if you were to pick one of those Advantage plans, 2 of those plans only cover in county. So be careful of that. There are others you can swing out. With the Medicare Gap Coverage, anybody that takes Medicare has to take the Gap Coverage. Okay, so if you go to Stanford, if you go to UCSF, if you go to UCLA, those are all covered facilities. And so if you have Medicare Gap Coverage Part F, you're going to be 100% covered. At Stanford, at UCSF, at UCLA. Oh, so I don't need to look it up. The customer service number is 755-8055. Again, I'll give that one more time. 755-8055. So Lorena's extension, one of our customer service reps, is extension 4269. She's the one that's bilingual and speaks Spanish and English, but I don't know if that matters to anybody. Uh-huh.
The amount of difference between all these carriers is not very good.
None. So the question was, he showed me the picture of all the different carriers. It was one of the past slides. And he asked, so what's the difference between Plan F for all these different carriers? And my answer was none. But let me restate, because the only difference is the administrative fees that they're allowed to charge you. So the carriers are the same, the coverage is the same, everything's the same with the coverage. But they are allowed to charge you a little bit more to be Anthem or a little bit more to be Blue Shield or whoever. Yeah, it's typically within $10 of each other, so there's not a huge variance. There's 1 or 2 carriers that are like $50 or $80 more. I don't know why. Drug coverage is the bigger differential. Very true. Up front. So this was a district question, but I think I know the answer. So the question was, do we continue with vision and dental at the current carriers? And I believe the answer is yes. So you can continue coverage with current vision and dental if you want to keep those. Judy's not chasing me down and hollering at me, so I'm pretty sure that's right. Okay. What drug companies do these fall under?
If you're getting prescription drugs, what company they go in?
Oh, so the question, you guys have SilverScript right now, right, through CVT? So you can, yeah, SilverScript or Caremark. So you can pick any of these different carriers. There's 12 different plans up there, and you can pick any of those for the Medicare Part D coverage. So you might have an Anthem, or somebody else might want an Aetna. The biggest differential between the drug carrier, gap coverage, is the formulary. So make sure you tell them all of the drugs you're taking so they can do that analysis to figure out what the best thing for you is. Yeah, so you can have any of the carriers will have the prescription drug coverage. So a great question about coordination of benefits up here. So with some carriers, you have your primary coverage pays, Medicare pays, and then you've got to make copies and all this other stuff and get it to your secondary coverage. So there is 100% coordination of benefits between Medicare and Medicare Gap coverages. That's built into the system, so you won't have to worry about that. And if you ever see something goofy, you're in Plan F and all of a sudden they send you a bill for part of it, I'll personally happy to have you come visit and call somebody on that. So. Another one.
When we call Connexus and sign up. At that time, do we sign up for the Anthem? You know, I have SilverScript, or what do they call it? Do I have to change that then?
So the question was, when I call Connexus and do I need to change my SilverScripts? The answer is yes. You'll change your SilverScripts when you call up Connexus, and it's your Part D gap coverage you're changing. So you've got 12 options. On the medical side, you've got 40, I don't remember the number, 49 options, plus your Advantage options. I think you've got 53 total.
If I use the Medicare prescription drug coverage, and there are a great number more than 12 family plans, you can use 12. So are you filtering out those that you decided don't need your standards?
So good question up front here. He said he's gotten on the Medicare Compare website and looked at some of the drug coverages, and there are dozens and dozens of prescription drug coverages. And he asked, are we filtering out ones we don't like or whatever to get down to that 12? This software actually only shows you the ones that will write in Monterey County. So there are hundreds literally of plans out there throughout the country, but they only write in certain counties and parts of states.
This is on, when you go into this thing, first thing it asks is your zip code. Any of the plans listed at that point are in Monterey.
Now, are you talking about prescription drug or are you talking about Medicare? Okay, so I can go back to the office and play with it. I haven't played with that tool before. But my understanding was that this are all of the plans that are for prescription drug Part D. But I'll play with the tool today, and I can get back to you on that.
Essentially, your understanding is that anything that's offered in Monterey County, would be looked at.
So the question was, do I believe everything that's available is available through Connexus? I believe that is true. I know that last year CHOMP talked about unregistering from the National Registry on Medicare Advantage plans. And if they did that, then they would no longer be listed nationally. But with that exception, that's the only thing I know of that might be an issue. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and look forward to working with you.